Step on.
Likee.
Hello everyone, it's your boy Sam, and I'm back here with another Boruto episode. So it's gonna be a more or less a 3 episode review in which I cover 3 Boruto episodes. So in this one specifically, I won't be just focusing on just the narrative of what's going on, such as what's going in order from in the order of the manga. Also be coming up talk about the concept.
Leave Benny alone!
Which I have been able to catch up mainly through spoilers through some of my favorite Boruto YouTubers, but also been just by pure common sense and just placing things together from the anime and being able to piece them together from the manga. Even though these are just subtle things, but we're not just going to be talking about the difference today. What we're going to be talking about is concepts that will be used in the future, things that will be used in the future episodes. How these episodes are they 10 worthy? Even though from 182 to 184, for me most of them are at least a 7 to 8 out of 10. If you've seen some on Anime Balls These on Anime Balls These Twitch stream review, or I just seen them in general. So far from the adaptation to the manga, Boruto's maturity, because the one thing that has been remarked the most is Boruto's maturity. Even though I knew for a fact that with the way Boruto has grown so much, and the way he just uses his brain, and has grown up from so much unnecessary arcs. You have probably seen that we've all complained about that we have all in unison and fight against each other that Boruto is shit because of these arcs that are unnecessary because of how poorly written they are. But eventually, they're able to connect and to make Boruto a much more mature, creative character that understands both sides of the spectrum, that understands how technology is used, all the way to understand how the Shinobi way can coincide with that instead of it being used to fight against each other. Even though the full concept of a civil war between Shinobi versus technology hasn't fully sprout out, because if you've seen Boruto chapter 54, there have been many more say theories surrounding it. For example, if you have seen my Boruto chapter 54 review and more so other things coming around that, on how there could be a war of technology, of non-Shinobi versus Shinobi, and how the people who weren't Shinobi, like the civilians who can't use chakra or don't want to use chakra and just want to live a normal life, more or less will be compelled to pick the side of technology and to be like, we have all felt over prospect of the world, and since there is quote unquote I forgot how many wars past the fourth Great Shinobi War, since that has caused so much damage, especially with Mother and his ideology. Even though in my opinion he was in the right perspective, just he was taking a subtly. He was using the concept of reality and actually making it into a reality for each and everyone there, which obviously affected everyone in the area, which would then compel people to be against ninjutsu, against using chakra, and also how it's used, because chakra in general, just like ninja weapons, technology is it can be used for good and bad, as shown so many times, as we all know. But it's not about just showing the yin and yang aspect of how it can be used, and how Boruto eventually comes to understand it through seeing Mujino die, which was, if you have seen the manga, and also spoilers once again, shout out to Naruto Explain Anime Balls D, but look at me, come on, shout me out please. Well, everyone here, shout me out. Is that, or subscribe to me, is that pretty much Mojino died in the fight with Team 7 versus Ao. Team 7, Ao mainly using Shinobi techniques to quickly disarm the tech Katasuke have, and a lot of things about the ninja tech I got off, because if in Team 7 versus the outer's puppets that were used from Victor, that also Depot went to research from Tornado Squad, and to make them into puppets that are resistant to ninjutsu, that they can fire him back, similar to how Zetsu can, um, similar to the Zetsu monster Kanabru went up against and lost. Well, subtle. You better stop. To blast it both with that. Talk about Jugo, another subtle elf from Kanabru, subtle. Even though he didn't win that one, but it looks like Kanahama hasn't really been looking so good, to the point that saying him as the eighth Hokage is, well,
Where they at though?
it's more so a trash way of how 2020 made The Last of Us the game of the year. So do not be surprised if Gorachi decides to make out of nowhere make Kanahama the Hokage when he hasn't showed the intelligence and the power to do so. So far, Boruto, in terms of skill, has surpassed him. In terms of power, yes. Just because you're losing Maki does mean you have reserve. It only means that you have a chakra that can give you longevity. This is why Mito lived a long time. This is why Kushina could survive with Naruto's being, even though for Naruto's sake, he can so far not survive having the nine tails ripped out of him once, and also having his nine tails chakra along with his own chakra dying at the same time, depending on what's happening in 54. But in terms of what's happening from 182 to 185, what's happening is Boruto on the mission with Team 7. They come across Ao gets a Order 66 mission to eliminate Team 7. Back in the car hideout, if you've seen today's episode, and also back from 182 coming up from 185, but going back to 180, you also see that Victor has been killed. He lost. He avoided out of the ship. Code is one of those teammates that is like, I vote for volunteer. Vote that nigga out. He is as if you've seen Naruto explains review and the reaction, it's beautiful. He just gotta go. Code is like one of those dunnies that he may not be the imposter, but he's just too smart and too Code. So in terms of the character of Code, so far I see him as like a sub Karma Akabane. If you've seen Assassination Question, check out Karma Akabane. There's so many similarities, yet if you've seen also today's Twitch stream review, and also in general, he does seem a bit more childish and not as mysterious as he was as described in the manga. Also by spoilers, which were also back in like 2020, back in like 2019, and also around 2018. I wasn't really paying attention to the manga compared to like 2020. But in general, Code is like one of those characters who I've mentioned before have the potential to be badass, but hope it comes across, because there was a flurry theory that since he was constantly around Jigen, or quote unquote Ishiki, and since he surprisingly was surprising, I kind of went under the radar of how he was happy about the vessel being Kawaki being lost, and also he was also willing to find the culprit, even though Amano went and was like, mate, Jigen won't be so happy if you do so. So, a fluttery theory about Code being Jigen's Jigen without Ishiki's son, or someone else in line to be the vessel. Even though the weird thing is that all the children that Jigen found unworthy, he killed. As for Kawaki, he tortured and was like, yeah, you're mine. As for Code, if Code was one of those children, he must have been very strong, but not strong enough to hold out. And Utsutsuki being that could potentially do more than just destroy a planet, because if he's able to molest two split halves of Hagoromo's power, then of course he can take care of the full power Hagoromo post-death or alive. So that's just in terms of power. Others was how Boruto's ideology of the technology. So this is where I'm gonna take my time here, but not too much. Maybe for that it's a lot more simpler. So in Boruto's journey, more or less as a Shadow Hokage walking in the footsteps of Sasuke, but also much similar to Minato, but not being all Hokage, but having the mindset of both in a way. being more so a shinobi that accepts things as they are. He wants to use technology in not necessarily a positive or negative light, but so far, if you've seen 185, and it's a shonen and not how we do a
Leave Benny alone!
careful, I said subtly, is made the fact that he wants to use it in a way that benefits his teammates, benefits himself, and to keep them alive. And this is why he was very, very hesitant in saying, Kanamru, don't do this, don't sacrifice your life. Because if Mojino, who is, in my opinion, is weak and doesn't have enough tactical shinobi skills compared to Kanamru, Trashimaru, he, like, in the way Mujino died and the way it ended in 184, the way it was more so described in the manga, all the way to how it was re-inscribed in 185 with the emotion of Mujino's death and how Boruto felt, how Kamu felt. It makes sense. It made even sense for why Boruto wanted, but guess what? But even Naruto would have done the same thing, except Boruto would have. Boruto took the thought-provoking route in which he played a big brain play, and that he went back to square one. It's like, no, I hate technology, but he did that in order to get into to the mind of Katatsuka and be like, yeah, I bet you said that because technological tools killed one of your good friends and someone misused it. More or less, it's not just of someone misusing it, it's more so of why I forgot his, because it's an AO and my name is very much similar to that. It's an AYO, but his is ow. There you go. Ow. So if you've seen Ow in like the third Mitsukage's assistant, if you also seen him, he was also a tool for Danzo to use. He also was a tool of the third Mitsukage, even though no one really cares about it. I mean, I think she's hot. I mean, when it comes to the whole thing of her being powerful, everything kind of just swept the other way, even though she did damage Sasuke. But in terms of him being a tool, and also how he was used, and also how he was treated like a bitch by Danzo. But that's so far how far that I would look at it, even though Susha horrified him. So in terms of his ideology, he was mainly the bitch boy. He was mainly pushed, and accepted as a tool, and wanted to break away from life of a shinobi as described, and to be more or less not a shinobi, but just a tool being used by people who have shinobi abilities, modified shinobi abilities, but not necessarily a shinobi. Because Ao doesn't believe in the way of shinobi. Koji doesn't necessarily, even though he's more or less Jiraiya's clone. That's why it triggers so many people who love Jiraiya. But in terms, it's more say dark Jiraiya. What if Jiraiya took ABC route? Even though if you notice Jiraiya kills, which means he more or less accepted the world he was in, compared to Naruto, which also allowed him to create another world that he didn't want to accept, because he wanted to keep everyone in that dream reality that everyone's gonna be fine. I'll be okay, which is understandable, but you refuse to punish Sumri, which in terms of how he rules and how he handles villains, if he were to handle Ao, he wouldn't kill him. He would just stop him because he's much weaker than him. But then bringing someone who's way stronger than him, he's like, you gotta go. You just gotta go. And it's more or less a hypocritical route, which I said so many times that I'm gonna have to say it again. It is a hypocritical route from Naruto. This is why Boruto accepted the fact that tools can be used both ways eventually, without Boruto lecturing him with his own experience. So let me track back to something involving Boruto. Boruto's growth as a shinobi vital today in today's episode. Today's episode, yes, didn't have action. It had more or less Among Us gameplay of Code finding out the car members, and you see their IQ levels and where they want, and also well, not necessarily where they want, because their secret desires of why they're in Kara, and also why Jigen wants them there. It hasn't been revealed. All what we know is that Jigen more or less wants Kawaki to um, have a fully empowered vessel become 10 times more stronger than he previously was, and he was kind of ragdolling Naruto and Sasuke over and over again until Sasuke almost died multiple times, and Naruto is also dying after trying to put the drop on Ishiki, even though Ishiki kind of punched out Barama and Naruto's dying, which I don't care. But if Naruto is to stay alive, at least make him grow up from his naive perception of reality, which is still there. As for Boruto is starting to accept it, but because here's the thing, it's either Minato or Sasuke would have been like, okay then, Kanahamaru's gonna be the um um the decoy. No, no. I think we all would have said no for one good reason. Kanahamaru, you do know you're trash. That has stayed alive in the ABD community. Trash Maru is, well, not fit to be Hokage. So if it's down to his death, you'll never be Hokage. Oh, prove by strength, you kind of have failed so many times that
Leave Benny alone!
no go for you. Even though Katasuke volunteered and claimed responsibility. Even though more or less jumping from 182 to 183 to 184 25, he doesn't. Even though he was Genjutsu and happened to um, expose secrets and into more advanced technology to Kawa's point that it said that Amado can create artificial dojutsus. The question is, can he make an artificial Jogan? Can he make an artificial Karma Seal? Yes, more or less from Inatsuki's DNA, let's say Urashiki's DNA, but Urashiki's dead in another timeline. What if he got Moroshiki's DNA, but Morishiki is kind of stay away from Kara, even though in terms of like the chapter, he's next. He was next to Kwaki and Boruto. What about Ishiki? Ishiki, through Jigen, was able to give Amano just a piece. I haven't seen it, but most likely a piece, to the point that Code will resurrect Ishiki and bring back Ishiki, fulfilling the prophecy for Kawaki of him being a subtle cause, but more so Boruto taking full 100% responsibility because of his eye, not this karma seal, which would make perfect sense why Boruto is able to negate karma and also have his chakra, and even when it's depleted, rely on his Jogan to balance it out. But then since he doesn't understand the full power of the Jogan, and since the Jogan is more or less an eye power that is unknown to the Naruto world, but is also practically the birth of all dojutsus, including the Runic Sharingan, which also can give birth to the Infinite Tsukuyomi, and more or less its ability. This also means the Jogan would be described as a godlike Otsutsuki level ability that only the Otsutsuki king queen would have, but that's just assuming that or the latter. In terms of Boruto's growth, in terms of how we understand technology and how he can be used for good and bad, he'll most likely be like an ambassador to as he explores the shinobi world, and also showing it the benefits of both chakra and technology, and how both can be used. Heck, even Orochima made a synthetic human that could potentially hold a karma, even though he holds half Otsutsuki DNA mixed in with his Sage Mode, making Sage Mode Mitsuki. Also, in terms of like how, and in terms of, let's say, IQ, wrapping up today's review, and just a bit more so, in terms of IQ, Code and Amato are the top highest, smartest, along with Jigen being number one. It's more so how IQ was used, even though Dota, who, if you haven't seen much IQ from, but just funny, entertaining brattiness, and he's hot, of course. Come on, guys. But at the same time, we're still playing IQ from Code being more so of the observing type. As for Amato, he's doing a big brain Crowley movie. If you've seen Supernatural, he's more so like giving information, moving around, and just giving them false trust. And Delta is the first one to strike while Code's like, oh, okay. As for, let's say, Boru is more more or less sus with his last and all that. But in terms of finding out who is the traitor later on, it will be revealed later on in the chapter, revealed later on in the upcoming manga, which has been revealed already as Amado and Kashin Koji having to escape. But in terms of today's episode, and we build up for Team 7 versus Ao, if you've seen half of the fight, Magino was stabbed as Team 7 were trying to run as from the chakra machine gun that was dope that Ao rinsed everyone with. And he used his chakra teleportation to rip off the techno absorbing gadgets that Katasuke used to absorb the attacks from the puppets to make them overheat and well knocked him out. So it's more or less a something they learned from Momoshiki, but it's not on the point where it can absorb things. Momoshiki can make 1 millionth things up to eternity, because if you've seen the movie anime, the movie anime all the way to the manga, which I'm coming up close to the Naruto Sasuke versus Momoshiki battle. Momoshiki states that he can make the Tibi's bomb up to eternity, and to the point that it matches Kaguya's planet busting orb busting orb. Also, to wrap this up, they are taken out. So more or less, Ninja Turtles can take out Shinobi, just not Shinobi, who are smarter, faster, and who know how to use Ninja Tools. So in terms, we're just starting to understand it more, and it's core. So Boruto will be the living counter for technology, and also a Shinobi, because he's also a dark Shinobi as a shell Hokage, and also the nasty power ups Boruto automatically has. So, this has been your boy Sam Bird. Check out my Twitch stream. I'm streaming a lot. I'm also will be doing a Boruto 54 review, and we'll be covering a bit more, but check it out.